As everything is building towards the climax of Jesus' ministry, the theme of judgment continues. But we also have here some preparation for the disciples for the things that are to come after his departure. This is not as clear here as it was in the second half of the Gospel of John, where Jesus explicitly spoke of his going away and of his replacement by the Holy Spirit. Jesus' warnings here echo some things said in chapter 10 in the Mission Discourse. But he also speaks about conditions beyond his disciples. This includes what will happen to Jerusalem and also what will happen to the whole world in the run-up to the return of the Son of Man. Jesus then gives a series of parables continuing into chapter 25, which illustrate the sudden and unexpected return of the Son of Man and the critical requirement to be ready, to watch and be prepared. The obvious concern for the disciples, and indeed for us too, is the question of when. But Jesus is vague about this. In fact, he says he doesn't know. Only the Father actually knows. Instead, Jesus gives guidance on how to negotiate the troubled times before the end. His disciples have already been warned about the persecutions they will face, but here Jesus describes the wider situation of greater and greater sin. There will be lawlessness and hatred and apostasy, and the love of many will grow cold. But all the while, as he says in verse 14, the good news of the kingdom of heaven will be preached in all the world. And only then will the end come. This shows that despite everything, God's will is inexorable. Darkness will increase, but the light of the gospel will continue to shine and spread regardless. From the disciples' point of view, this does mean that they must endure to the end. The endurance of the saints is a major theme also of Revelation. We have seen before in Matthew, again particularly in the Sermon on the Mount, warnings about false teachers and prophets. False claims and deceptions are going to be a major feature of the coming crisis. Jesus again warns that such false prophets will even be able to produce great signs and omens, as we saw in 7:22. This is taken up in Revelation 13:13-14, where the beast from the earth is able to deceive people into worshipping the beast from the sea by mimicking miracles done by Elijah and Moses. Jesus warns, do not believe them. When the Son of Man returns, you will not have to go somewhere and make inquiries. It will be as clear to all as lightning across the sky. The highly cryptic statement of verse 28 probably means dead things attract things that like dead things. It is similar to the saying, let the dead bury their own dead. Or perhaps from a later writing for Ezra, empty things are for the empty. Don't let the popularity of a certain event fool you, even if lots of people go excitedly into the desert to join up with someone interesting. A wake of vultures will gather around a corpse, but it is still a corpse. The question of timing still presses, however. Matthew's version of this speech makes the questions of the disciples clearer than in Mark 13, so that there is a distinction between the destruction of the temple and the end of the world. At points, it looks as though the end of the world will come immediately after the sack of Jerusalem, as he says in verse 29. But ultimately, Jesus does not answer the disciples' question from verse 3. It seems as though he blends the impending events of the destruction of the temple with the build-up to the end of history and with the return of the Son of Man. All that is necessary for them to do is to preach the gospel, endure the worsening conditions of the world, and await the return of the Son of Man, who will come at any moment, but not before they see these sufferings, and not before the gospel is preached to all the world.